Am I the asshole for leaving the weekend friend trip after being made to sleep on the couch? I, female, 29, and Josie, female, 30, have been friends since high school. We live apart but still keep in very regular contact. I was invited to stay with her and her husband, Leo, male, 30, for a few days because their town was having a huge annual festival that we were all interested in attending. They had asked me to come early this year. Maybe a month or so before, they informed me they invited some college friends to stay for the weekend as well. I was excited for this because I have only met their college friends a handful of times and I know they are really close. The plan was for me to stay Thursday to Monday. I should also preface that when Josie and Leo bought their home, I stayed with them for a month while I was between jobs. This was many years ago now, but ever since, it has been dubbed my room. It is obviously not actually mine, but I have stayed in it every time I have visited them since. I drove 4 hours to their place on Thursday. When I arrived, their college friends were there already, and I was shocked to see it wasn't just them. Josie and Leo had invited their friend Shane and his fiancée, and their friend Sarah and her husband. I have met Shane and Sarah before, but not their partners. I was immediately irritated because it felt like a couple's get-together already. I have a partner of nearly 3 years who I live with, Oliver, who Josie and Leo have met several times, and he was not invited on this trip. I tried to get over the awkwardness and exchange pleasantries until I went to go upstairs and put my bag away, and Josie and Leo stopped me and told me that Shane and his fiancée were staying in that room. I was like, whoops, my bad, I should not have assumed and asked if I was in the other, smaller guest room. They said no, Sarah and her husband were in there. They told me then that they hoped I was okay with sleeping on the couch. I was really trying not to be too annoyed or cranky about this, but I had just driven 5 hours and was under the impression I was getting a bedroom for the weekend, mostly because we had this weekend planned for months and they had never mentioned otherwise. I would not have been opposed to a couch sleep for maybe one night, but there was no way I was going to sleep on the couch for the entire weekend, especially since we'd be drinking and partying pretty heavily. I asked them why they didn't tell me plans had changed so I could get a hotel sooner, and they insisted they didn't think I'd have a problem sleeping on the couch. Apparently, Sarah and her husband were planning on getting a hotel, but waited too long and couldn't find an affordable one last minute. At this point, I was really irritated, both by the partner situation and the sleeping arrangements. I called Oliver, and he was upset for me. We both looked for hotels in the area, but could not find anything affordable for the entire weekend. I told Oliver about the couples, and he was annoyed to not be invited since he likes Josie and Leo a lot. Finally, after like an hour of back and forth, Oliver asked if I wanted to come home, and I honestly really did. I privately told Josie and Leo I was uncomfortable by the situation, wished everyone a good weekend, and drove back home. I got a call Saturday morning from Josie saying she was really disappointed that I had acted so rashly and she wished that I had stayed. I told her that I didn't understand why she didn't update me on the sleeping situation as soon as she knew about it, and she told me the only reason I was booted to the couch is because Sarah and her husband both couldn't fit. So then I asked her why she didn't invite Oliver if she had invited the other couples, and she just said sorry they hadn't thought about it. I told her that I was upset and hurt by the situation, and I didn't regret leaving. I received another message from her last night saying everyone had left and she was really disappointed in me and that I ruined her weekend because she was upset the entire time. I am starting to feel bad and also FOMO from not being there. I had been really looking forward to the festival and hanging out with everyone. Anyway, am I the asshole for leaving? Edit, as I'm reading through the comments, I'm untangling some of the feelings I was having. I'm upset by being assigned to the couch, especially because it was last minute and I was not told beforehand. An entire weekend of partying with an uncomfortable sleeping arrangement and no privacy really sounded miserable. I am not 22 anymore, but I do think I am more upset about Oliver's exclusion and just didn't piece it together while holding on to the couch as an excuse. It really did feel like it was made into a couple's weekend and somehow Oliver and I were excluded from that. I hated immediately feeling like the seventh wheel. Edit 2. I did not know Shane and Sarah's partners were going to be there literally until I walked in and saw them. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. Everyone sucks here. You just assumed you'd have a bed. You should have asked. This entire weekend sounds poorly planned and a lot of assumptions on everyone's part. Driving 5 hours only to turn around right away is pretty dramatic. You could have stayed one night. You even said one night on the couch would be fine and gone home the next day. Original poster. I assumed I had a bed because the original plan was for me to have a bed. When we made the plans in January, we both confirmed I would be staying in a guest room. Shane and Sarah were added to the trip early April, and it wasn't until Sarah and her husband informed them they couldn't find a hotel, which, to me, understanding was like a week before the trip, that Josie moved around sleeping arrangements and didn't tell me. Commenter 2, they should have told you in advance. It was foolish not to, and avoidance behavior. But at the same time, I hope you can talk it out. Friends who take you in for a month during tough times don't sound like entirely horrible or malicious people. If it were me, I'd give it some cool downtime and then reach out to hash it out with them calmly. Original poster. We have been friends for 15 years. I know they are good people. I hate that we are upset with each other. I would really love for us to move past this. Commenter 3, info. How was it decided Oliver wouldn't come? Without knowing how that conversation went, it's tough to weigh in. When they first invited you, how did they make it clear the invite was for you only? It's very unusual when two people live together to invite only one on a weekend away, especially when the only other people involved are also a couple. Did you say anything then? If you accepted without even checking in about Oliver coming, they may have gotten the impression there wasn't a lot of interest from you or Oliver in him attending. Just need more info overall. The couch thing is definitely annoying. I have been there. I stuck it out, but it was only for one night, and there was no question of anyone being in the living room past like 10 p. You absolutely should have been given a heads up. Original poster. When we made the plans back in January, it stemmed from Josie and I seeing the event advertised and agreeing it sounded fun. She invited me to come stay with her for the weekend. Her husband would be there, obviously, but it was definitely meant to be a girls' weekend, which we do at least once a year. I presented it to Oliver that way, and he told me to have fun. As far as I am aware, at some point Leo suggested inviting Shane, their college friend, which Josie told me about. She also mentioned that Sarah might be joining as well since she'd heard about the event and was interested. At no point did Josie or Leo mention Shane and Sarah would be bringing their partners or that sleeping arrangements would change. I have met Shane and Sarah maybe 3 or 4 times in the last 7 years. I don't even have their cell numbers, so I have no idea what happened between them and Josie and Leo planning-wise. I knew Sarah was married, but didn't know Shane had just gotten engaged. So, I was invited by Josie for somewhat girls' weekend, and then eventually Leo invited Shane, I assumed to have a guy friend and to not be a third wheel, and then Sarah to the weekend just had the vibe of a bunch of friends getting together. I 100% would have invited Oliver or asked if he could come if I knew Shane and Sarah were bring their partners. Downvoted commenter, you sound exhausting. The room is your room, but you don't expect it to be yours, but you're still upset that you couldn't have it. Here's a rent-free place to lay your head at night that doesn't have all the incredible amenities you've come to expect by virtue of how spoiled you've lived your entire life. What counts as an affordable hotel? The prices that local establishments were asking should have alerted you to exactly what the cost of a room in the area for a weekend actually costs. But you expected a free room while dictating who can and cannot stay in a house you don't own. Then you worked yourself up into a further frenzy by entering an echo chamber with your significant other instead of just talking to your hosts about your disappointments. Your partner being left out could very easily have been a simple oversight. It is not necessarily a direct reflection of how your friends think of you or him. This whole issue could have been resolved with either a simple conversation before you chose to abruptly leave or by you taking initiative to secure lodging that met your expectations independent of your friend's generosity. Get your head out of your ass and act like the grown-up you're claiming to be. Original poster. The reason I mentioned my room is only because it had been established that I'd be staying there early on in the planning. I know I am not entitled to the room. It is their house, and I would not have had any problem not staying in that room. I also would not have had a problem getting a hotel if I had been informed of the sleeping arrangements beforehand. At the point of me finding out, Thursday afternoon, a large majority of the hotels in the area had been booked for the festival, and the rooms I could find were at least twice the price they normally were, and no hotel I called had consecutive availability for the weekend. I am sure this is the same problem Sarah and her husband ran into when they tried to book. Update: 9 days later, I waited until the weekend to call Josie because I thought we could both use the time to cool off and think about the situation. I spent a few days parsing through your comments. When we finally got on the phone, she was instantly apologetic for how the previous weekend went, but before we went further into the conversation, I asked her to explain how we ended up where we did. So here are the events as she told it. Her and I made plans in January for me to come visit for this festival. Her husband, Leo, was only interested in like 1 day's events and wasn't planning on attending with us the rest of the time, so it was mainly a girls' weekend for us. Sometime in March, Leo mentioned the weekend to Shane, his college friend who showed interest. Josie said it was Leo's idea to invite Shane, so he'd have someone to hang out with while her and I were busy with our plans. Josie and Leo told me at this point that Shane would be there for the weekend, too. Then I guess a couple of days after that, Sarah in the same college friend group heard about the event from Shane, and her husband decided to go as well. Josie at this point told me that their friend Sarah would also be in town for the festival. She did not tell me Sarah was planning on staying at their house because they had originally planned on getting a hotel. Somewhere between Shane being added and the festival weekend, Shane proposed to his now fiancée and then requested she be added to the trip. The Monday before the trip, Sarah and her husband called that they couldn't find an affordable hotel and asked if they could stay with Josie and Leo. When I asked Josie why she didn't just update me on the plans, she said she was feeling overwhelmed by all of the changes and worried that if I knew I'd be now sleeping on the couch, I wouldn't come. She claimed that her and Leo looked for hotels for me, but also couldn't find anything affordable. She said she felt bad. She understood why I left, but she wished that I hadn't, and that she spent the entire weekend feeling awful. So, she did apologize, and I also apologized for leaving abruptly without talking it out. I also felt very overwhelmed by the situation, especially because I barely know Shane and Sarah, let alone their partners. That's the simplified version of that problem. Now, I also asked why they hadn't thought to invite Oliver. I said that I understood plans changed pretty fast, but there was a decent chunk of time where she knew all the couples would at least be at the festival, and she could have at least extended the invite. I said I wasn't buying the excuse that they forgot, especially since she just explained she was kind of purposefully keeping me in the dark in the hopes I wouldn't cancel. Josie admitted that the last time all four of us were together, which was last September, Oliver made a pass at Leo that made Leo really uncomfortable. It was a night we had all been out drinking, and according to Leo, somehow the conversation got around to the topic of Oliver's sexuality. He's bi, and Leo made a comment about never having any sexual interaction men, to which Oliver responded, "Well, if you ever want to change, that let me know." I got off the phone to talk to Oliver. I know that he would never cheat on me and that he probably meant it as a joke. Oliver said he remembered the night and said it was just a joke because he could tell Leo was uncomfortable with Oliver's past dating men and that he didn't think Leo took him seriously. He offered to call Leo and smooth it over himself, but I told him to hold off because I didn't want to make the situation worse. I just told Josie privately that Oliver didn't mean to make Leo uncomfortable and that he was sorry, and she said she'd tell Leo that. So, Josie and I are okay, even if things are still a little tense. I genuinely don't know what to do about the Leo and Oliver situation other than let it smooth over with time. I only see Josie 3-4 times a year, and Oliver sees them maybe 1-2 times a year. So hopefully the next time we all want to do something, it can just be forgotten.